So my name is Snezna Rogelj. I'm a professor here at New Mexico Tech, and I will be telling you about a novel material, MycoDelens, which is drug resistance insensitive and human skin compatible antibacterial, antifungal, and antiviral disinfectant. And I'm a professor, as I said, here at New Mexico Tech in biology department. And Dr. Turner, who is currently halfway through medical school at UNM and continues to be a postdoc here, received her bachelor's, master's, and Ph.D.s in biotechnology here at New Mexico Tech. So we worked together for the last almost 10 years towards developing new curative compounds to treat infectious disease that includes bacterial infections, developing new antibiotics, as well as parasitic infections. And while such curative new drugs, compound-based drugs, are indeed desperately needed, prevention is sure to be even more impactful and valuable. So we added that to our repertoire of our efforts, and we developed MycoDelens, a non-toxic composite formulation with novel emergent antimicrobial properties. And what is so wonderful about MycoDelens is that it's equally efficient at eradication of both drug-sensitive as well as multi-drug resistant bacteria and fungi. And that includes a number of tier 1 select biothreat agents. It also displays some antiviral activity, and it's been tested against at least 2 variants of SARS-CoV-2, where it was found to be over 99.99% effective. And the other characteristic of MycoDelens is that it resists evolution of resistance because of its rapid kill. And it's active, it's even active against disinfectant resistant bacteria. For example, it will kill bacteria that have evolved resistance amongst this, against this very widely used compound triclosan. Unlike a lot of other disinfectants, it is not toxic to the skin. It's not corrosive. It's not an oxidizing agent, and it doesn't contain either alcohol or hydrogen peroxide, and as such is easier to transport as well. It is effective on inanimate surfaces across a wide variety of textures. It's effective on animal, including human skin, and on plants, and it works to completion within minutes and can leave behind a protective surface for several days. It can be formulated as a concentrate and thus safely transported. And we have filed for a patent through New Mexico Tech. Patent is pending. A non-provisional was submitted about a year ago. Now, to illustrate the need for MycoDelens and other disinfectants, let's talk a little bit about bacterial infections. They do rank among the top 10 causes of death worldwide. And we're all familiar with drug resistance evolving super fast to the point where antibiotics are not effective against bacteria or fungi any longer. A lot of these infections are picked up in the hospital, and it's somewhere around 2 million infections that are picked up in hospitals per year in the United States alone, and about 23,000 of them result in deaths due to infections due to multi-drug resistant infections. It is estimated that 1.2 million global deaths occurred in 2019 due to multi-drug resistant bacterial infections. And World Health Organization estimates that by 2050, about 10 million people will die every year from multi-drug resistant bacterial infections worldwide. This can be compared with something on the order of 6 million deaths due to COVID during these last 2 years of pandemic. So, things are not looking good unless novel antibiotics and disinfectants are developed. And you may not be aware of the fact that about 150 people die every hour from fungal infections. That adds up to some 72 million people per year globally. And in US alone, MRSA kills over 30,000 every year. And when treatment is, even when people do not die and are saved, the hospitalization costs do double with the infection. So since most bacterial and fungal infections start on the skin, where they then spread into the body, where they are much, much harder to treat, there are multiple and multifaceted health, medical care, social, financial incentives to pursue the development of preventative strategies, preventative management of bacterially and fungally colonized animate and inanimate surfaces for both in the context of clinical and environmental applications. So let me just elaborate the tip of the iceberg here as to the applications of MycoDelens. Bacterially and or fungally infected skins, such as wounds that can be burns or cuts and scrapes, can be preventatively treated with MycoDelens because it is not selective for a particular pathogen. It will treat either a single pathogen or a mixture of different bacteria or mixture of bacteria and fungi, and can be particularly useful before or after surgery when minimizing infection is of utmost importance. MRSA is of particular concern, of course, and as are nasal infections of with MRSA and other pathogens in our noses. It turns out that all of us have a variety of different bacteria living in our noses. About 30% of us have MRSA, and decolonization prior to and post-surgery really makes a difference in terms of the outcome of the infective status of the surgery itself. One could treat bacterial and fungally infected mouths, ears, vaginal cavities. MycoDelens kills gonorrhea, a number of different species of bacteria causing UTIs, even kills bacteria that cause gingivitis and dental cavity caries. One could use it as a hand and foot spray, included into shampoos and soaps, and of course as a preventative, an antiviral preventative, as I'll tell you about more in a second, in this nasal spray. There are also environmental applications when one could disinfect hospitals and surfaces in airports and subways and kitchens. One could treat attics and basements to prevent the growth of, say, aspergillus, and of course, also various other structures that eventually get covered by algae and fungi. Instrument and equipment disinfection is a potential target, and because there is residual surface protection, that opens up a long-term treatment for a variety of surfaces. We've also documented that a number of agricultural plant pathogens are fully killed by MycoDelens. So there are a number of well, agricultural applications. The need is great for disinfection. It is estimated by 2050 the cost of hospital-associated infections is going to exceed $100 trillion globally. And just to give one particular example of a small hospital that had an outbreak of 40 bacterial MDR cases, it cost them $1.2 million to clear that up. And it is estimated that reducing antibiotic-resistant infections by prevention by just 20% would save over $5 billion in US alone. Another example that might be helpful to list here is that universally decontaminating the nostrils of patients that come into intensive care units would save $170,000 per 1,000 patients to a hospital, and additionally prevent 9 bloodstream infections, which of course are expensive to treat both financially and socially. A lot of ventilator-associated pneumonias are caused by multi-drug organisms, including Acinetobacter baumannii, and it is estimated that preventing those would save something on the order of $10,000 to $40,000 per patient. It might be mentioned that New York City subway pandemic cleaning costs were almost reached $500 million, and then there's many other examples that could be given. Now, this particular slide is demonstrate just the tip of the iceberg of enormous amount of data that we have accumulated over the last 5-6 years with Dr. Turner, treating a large number of different bacterial pathogens with either MycoDelens and comparing that activity with over-the-counter disinfectants or antibiotics or mupirocin, which at this point can also be purchased over the counter. And we find that while MycoDelens kills all the bacteria, most of these are multi-drug resistant. That is not the case for the over-the-counter drug or even mupirocin. The really important thing here to point out is that while one may observe a kill or by mupirocin, more effective kill by mupirocin per unit volume, within a matter of day or two, resistant colonies pop up in the areas that was treated, whereas for MycoDelens, there is no resistance. Resistance cannot evolve. We have an analogous slide for the antifungal activities, listing here some of the fungi that we have tested. That includes Candida auris, you might have heard about, some of the most multi-drug resistant fungus that is just terrifying the hospitals. And
we have about 30 seconds to wrap up. So
that too is, thank you, I will do that. That too is universally effective as opposed to prescription level monostat that very quickly evolves resistance as well. We have done a Timecourse study and found that MycoDelens kills the vast majority of the organisms, 7, 8 orders of magnitude kill within 2 minutes, and a slightly prolonged time of kill to reach 100% for a couple other organisms. And of course, we have the anti-SARS activity here shown as evaluated by an external laboratory, where we find greater than 99.9% kill of COVID-19 SARS-CoV-2 virus on an inanimate surface. Now, MycoDelens has been licensed now a couple years ago to Parnell Pharmaceuticals and was integrated into Parnell's products, nasal spray Pretz MD and a mouth coat MD. And it was approved and registered in Europe as a Class 1 medical device. In USA, it's available over the counter online as no movid. And now Parnell is seeking investors to help support global marketing as one preventative for COVID, and additionally as a nasal decolonizer, among other targets. In addition, New Mexico Tech Research Park subsidiary AGEA was formed a joint venture with Mr. Paul Silverman of Geltmore's Partners here in New Mexico to commercialize MycoDelens through a company also by the same name. And the idea is, the hope is that we'll mass produce MycoDelens and distribute it in the US and eventually globally. And we're at this point seeking EPA approval. Mr. William Seidel of America Invents is our marketing guru, and I will wrap it up here by expressing the appreciation for this opportunity to all of you, and open it up for any questions that you might have.
So let's go ahead and do a couple questions. We're running a little bit behind time, so we'll need to be quick on the questions, please.
Hey, this is Mike. I've seen a couple companies attempt to do, I'd say, something similar around a disinfectant, and they've stumbled on kind of a complex regulatory scheme, you know, FDA, EPA, USDA, depending on where they're going. Just how far along are you in your thought process there? Just because it can be a bit daunting for younger companies to navigate that.
Yeah, very much nailed the head. Hit the head of the nail, or nail on the head. That is absolutely what has been the problem. Both with Parnell, efforts were being made to be considered for funding and for FDA approval, and it is incredibly expensive. And sort of at the level of getting an approval for any anti-COVID vaccine, and we just do not have that sort of a funding. We have been trying to reach out to the military, which would particularly benefit from having something like this that can be that is so universally effective and easy to carry around, but so far have not received an offer of an investment opportunity, if you will. Mr. Silverman is also looking in that direction. We'll see how far we can make it on our own. It would be fantastic if somebody was willing to help us through the FDA and EPA approval process, but it is, we're speaking millions of dollars in investment.
How much do you think you need total? At least from the initial stage of the company.
We had guesstimated that somewhere on the order of $3 million would be, would get us through. And we understand that this is a great deal of money. On the other hand, the kind of an impact that something like this could have, both in the medical world and environmentally, it appears to us that it would be worthwhile pursuing that avenue.
It does seem that, I mean, you have a multitude, like your application slide was incredible. Like there's a lot there, and really focusing in on, you know, the top 2 or 3. Obviously you've already pursued one market, but that honing in on that will help the focus for how you're going to pursue this, and then also the money that you pursue on bringing MycoDelens further forward. So
yeah, thank you. You're absolutely right. I mean, at this point, Parnell, who has licensed and incorporated our product into his, is looking for investors who specifically would help with the marketing, bringing it out to a much larger number of people for a wide variety of applications. So that is one focus. And as far as environmental applications, that would be, you know, cleaning airports and hospitals. And Mr. Silverman is focusing on that.
Obviously a great need right now.
Yeah, we have one last question. Matthew, do you have a question before we wrap up?
Yeah, right now you're selling it over the counter. Are most of the customers like business to business sales, or is it consumers? Who's actually buying the product right now?
Best I understand, it is people like you and me. Consumers would order it from online, as well as, for example, dentists and medical doctors recommend it to their patients. And it's Parnell's community that's looking into it. For example, the word has gotten around and people will order it. I know a number of people at our university are using it regularly before going into any kind of a large meeting, whether it's with or without the mask. I wish I could answer your question better, but best I understand, it's the medical community, which was already familiar with Parnell's oral and nasal and mouth coat products, is now very avidly reaching out for this disinfectant version of it.
Okay.
All right. That concludes this presentation. Thank you very much. And we'll move to the next one.